Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, we're going to continue our specific podcast series where I'm revealing to you the secrets behind the billion-dollar apparel brands. And we are about in the next 2 weeks to get into some of the highest level executive processes that I have learned throughout my decades-long career inside the walls of the biggest brands of the apparel industry. Now, this topic that we're going to talk about today, which is forecasting, is something that I will just outright say is one of the most complicated processes that happens in the apparel industry, period. Getting a perfect guess on what to forecast for inventory, how much of every single item that you need to buy, guessing on that so that you don't have too much left over and you didn't have too little to sell to all of your customers who wanted to buy it, is something that is extraordinarily tricky. I don't know that there's ever a time when you could possibly do this 100% right. It would be a very interesting mix or a very interesting test to really do, because what we do as apparel brands is we're kind of out there making a guess as to what we think we can sell, right? We're trying to guess how many of these units would our customers buy. And a lot of times we will buy inventory. It will show up in our warehouse and it will either one of two things. It will either sell out faster than we were expecting, which basically means we didn't buy enough, right? So we lost out on the opportunity to sell to more people because our items were gone faster than we expected them to go. So this means that we've kind of lost out on sales. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that we order all of these units and they stick around a lot longer than we expect them to. So we end up in a situation where customers aren't buying as fast as we wanted or in the quantities that we wanted. And so we end up with additional inventory on our books, which ends up leading to clearances and sales and eventually trying to get that out into the hands of more people than who really wanted it up front. And so figuring out what that exact number is, that Goldilocks number that's right in the middle of having too much but not having enough, is really, really hard to decipher. Only if you maybe had like a specific wholesale business. Like let's say you were going out to bike shops, you're a cycling apparel company, you're going out to specialty bike shops and you're selling into the buyers of those shops. How many units do they want to buy from you? That can be an instance where you can pre-take sales and then you can create your own purchase order based on exactly what all of your different buyers wanted. So that's an instance where you can get every single unit that you need to make off of your books immediately. But again, it doesn't give you the opportunity to sell more. So if you had the opportunity to then sell on your own website, or maybe if you had held extra inventory, a wholesaler would have come to you later than all of the other buyers and said, oh, I'm interested too. Well, sorry, I don't have the inventory for that. I only bought exactly what I needed. Now that can be a way to go to the buyers and say, for next season, make sure you're on the list because we want to make sure you get what you need. We want to include you. That's a great process. Within the apparel industry, though, for the last several years, we've seen some ups and downs when it comes to inventory, and forecasting has been a really, really tricky process for all of our supply chain masters out there. If you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to Brittany Tupa's interview that we did on the podcast recently, she talked a lot about supply chain and how things have shifted quite a bit in the way of forecasting for our industry. How much people really stopped liking the forecasting process because it became so hard, especially throughout COVID when demand spiked for a lot of brands and then came back down really quickly when people started heading back to the office, going back out to concerts, going back on vacations, spending their money on different things. So head back over to that episode if you haven't listened to it yet. She is an expert in the supply chain industry. And so her advice is definitely something to take note of as well. The big topic that I wanted to get into today, even though I want to just, yes, definitely let you know this is a tough process. This is really hard. It can also be a necessary process for your business, for your manufacturing relationship. So when you're setting up a relationship with a manufacturer and a factory, whether they're local or overseas, you want to make sure that you are giving them as much information as you possibly can at the right times so that they will produce your goods exactly when you need it and exactly at the quality that you expect. So this contributes to a ton of different factors that go into your development process and your production process. But one thing that I really started to learn about in the last few years of my corporate career was how important this forecasting process could be to make all of that work like clockwork. So when we first start a line plan as a product manager, maybe you're a product line manager out there, or if you're a developer or technical designer, you working with a product manager on your team. And what we tend to do as product managers, if we are going through a really robust forecasting process in the apparel industry, is that first initial tech pack round. When our development and design team is working on new designs, we're working on new ideas, we're building out the entire line plan of what is this season going to look like once we add all of those new items, once we replace old items. We are starting to look at the historical numbers of what we have sold in the past to help our factory understand what this season is going to look like as we start working together. So this is what I like to call our initial seasonal forecast. We're putting together historical information. If you're putting in a new style into your line, you want to be looking at the past old style that it's maybe replacing, and then determining whether you think you can sell more of them because this new style is going to be oh so great. Or maybe you want to hold steady to what that old style sold because you want to make sure that your numbers are consistent. You want to make sure that your numbers are knowable. You want to make sure that they're kind of safe. So this initial sales forecast is going to do a couple of different things for you. It's going to, number one, indicate to your factory how much production space you expect to take up during your production process. So when you send over all of these numbers, they're rolling them up and saying, okay, they're expecting to make 1,000 tops and 1,000 bottoms and maybe 500 different pieces of accessories. That will help them reserve that production space for you and not give it away to other clients or customers so that when your production timeline hits and you're ready to go, those machines and that space is already booked for you. And if you can do this really early up front, it will really help your factory plan out their year and the flow of how they work with all of their customers really well. Factories love this when their clients come to them with early forecasts so that they can put aside all of that work. They can definitely put it into their plan. And then they also know how much income is going to be coming to them around that time. They know if you're only making 2,500 units, they're going to be making X amount of dollars. But let's say you're sending a forecast this year for 5,000 units and you're doubling what you're making. That can be really exciting for them. Doubling their profits on the units that you're making is also big for their business. So it could be that as you start sending out tech packs, getting in prototypes, working with them through your development phase, you're going to find that excitement you drummed up by sending over a healthy forecast. Now, before I say the end of this sentence, I am going to say you should never send over a false forecast. This could get you into a lot of trouble. Don't send over a false forecast at the beginning of a season just to drum up excitement from the factory. This is something that will come back to bite you in the butt. If you start with a really big forecast and end up having to take it down quite a bit, that is going to actually do the opposite of what you want it to do with your factory. You're trying to build a positive relationship here. You are trying to become partners. You want them, so finishing that sentence here, you want them to be excited about the number that you're sending them because it might create a better development flow. They might give you better prototypes. They might give you better timing. They might be more inclined to do something urgent or make a rare change for you. They might be willing to fit in another prototype in your timeline to make sure that you're hitting all of those deliverables because your forecast was good and they're excited for your business. Now, as you go through the rest of the season and you're placing your actual purchase orders, like I was saying, if you end up going down in your forecast drastically to the point where you were kind of falsifying what that first number was just for positive impact, it is going to really deplete your relationship for the following seasons. So you don't want to do that. You still want to send out an accurate forecast, something that you feel confident in at the beginning of the season, because while it might drum up excitement, it's the consistency in forecasting throughout a season that really builds strong ties and strong relationships with you and your factory. Being able to provide accurate information, be honest, truthful, and open with them about everything that's going on it's the way to build any relationship, right? Like we want that in our friendships. We want that from our family. And so it's the same here. While your factory is kind of working for you and you are their client, you want to be a good client. You want to be offering them great opportunities, great business, and you want to be a partner with them in being honest and giving them numbers that are real. Are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course. So that's the first time that we send out a forecast. This is a process, again, based a lot on historicals. If you can look back on what you sold in the previous year or in the previous season and make educated guesses on what you think you'll be producing, that can be really important. The next time that we're going to send out a forecast is if you're working with a sales team after you've worked with them on the first round of sales numbers. So there are kind of two sides to this coin. Either you're working with a sales team and you want to send them all of the information that they're going to need about the season. What styles are new? What colors are new? What are the SKUs? How are we expecting to market the units in this season? Are we really going to be amplifying a few key pieces that we want to get out into the world? And so those are the pieces we want them to buy heavy into. Are we starting to clearance out a few other items so we want them to take less? These are the types of things you want to work with your sales team on so that they can provide to you an estimate and a forecast of what they expect to be able to sell. So this becomes your second forecast if you're working with a sales team. If you are not working with the sales team and you're working, direct to consumer, you're just selling everything from your own website, what you want to start doing is polling your community. So start to get some information out there about what your community might like about the new products that you're putting into the world. Are you drumming up a lot of excitement, or are you starting to see kind of some crickets in this area? That will help you determine whether your initial forecast was accurate and whether you can hold it for this middle forecast, whether you want to raise it or lower it. So again, consistency is the name of the game here. If you can hold consistency from your first forecast to your second forecast, this is going to build a lot of great rapport with your factory. They are going to be really excited to not have to figure out how to work in additional production capacity or figure out how to take some away. So this can be a really important time. Your sales team could be set up with some goals, or if you're trying to hit growth goals for the year, this is a good time. This middle forecast, this second forecast is a really good time for you to start figuring out what those are. If I'm expecting to grow, $50,000 this year in annual gross revenue, how do I hit that? By making sure that I order enough inventory to bring those dollars into my business. So sending out this forecast is really important at this second stage. The third and final forecast that you want to send then is right before you're sending out your purchase order. This is essentially what you plan exactly to buy. So again, if you're working with a sales team, they've maybe gone out with their salesman sample kits, or they've gone out with your catalog, and they have come back and said, this is what I sold. They've already sold it. These are their actual numbers. This is what they want to take from you to then push into either your wholesale shops or push to other customers. If you are working again on your own, direct to consumer, this is the number that you've decided with your team. You've polled your customers, you've gotten feedback from your community. This is the number that you plan to actually buy. The goal between this final forecast and your actual purchase order to your factory is to be literally identical. And the reason for that is because your final forecast should be the opportunity for them to trigger every single purchase order that they need to place on your behalf. So if they're purchasing packaging for you, zippers, trims, labels, anything like that, if they're purchasing fabric for you, this is their indicator to say, okay, I'm bringing it in. I know exactly what it is that they're going to order. I know exactly how that breaks down into number of trims, into yield of fabric. And I need to now start getting that to come to my factory so that I can produce this purchase order that they plan to place. And the reason that we do this as a third forecast instead of the actual just PO is because there can be a lot of logistics that need to happen behind the scenes. Once you receive all of your numbers, you make a decision on exactly how much you want to buy. You might need to work with a logistics company. You might need to work with your supply chain team or your operations team to get all of that official purchase order paperwork made up so that is 100% perfect, exactly how the factory requests a purchase order to come in. So while everyone behind the scenes is working on that purchase order process, getting it ready to go out to the factory, you can send this final forecast saying it is firm. This is a firm forecast. This is what we are buying from you. Please go out and place all of your purchase orders for us on our behalf and know that the purchase order is coming. It is in works and it will be identical to this. So by doing that, they get a jump start on all of those purchases. They're able to order trims and fabrics just a little bit earlier. And if this works out perfectly, all of your items end up landing on their doorstep exactly when they need them so that they can then produce and ship your garments exactly as needed. Forecasting is 100% a risk. Always. There is always a chance that you're going to under forecast or over forecast. And I've seen it many times where, a forecast starts out really big at the beginning of the year because you think you're going to be able to make a lot, you're going to be able to sell a lot. And unforeseen circumstances happen where you need to decrease your forecast. And it's not anything that you necessarily did intentionally. It's just the nature of the beast sometimes in the apparel industry. So communication with your factory is always going to be key here, letting them know what's going on. If you need to decrease a forecast or increase a forecast, getting them on board with you to understand the whys is a way to really move forward as a partner with them. If you're interested in learning more about forecasting and what we do as executive leaders in the apparel industry, I encourage you to join me at one of my free workshops coming up. We are going to be kicking off our first workshop next week on February 8th. So if you're interested, you can go to thebusinessofapparel.com/free workshop to read what it's all about. I will be going into much deeper depth on a lot of different topics where we're going to be talking about your brand standards. We're going to be talking about professional line planning. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about these executive processes that can be really difficult. But if you can master them for your business, you'll be performing better than a lot of the brands in our space, and it will really project your company forward. So I encourage you to please come sign up. I would love to see you in our free workshop. We are going to be doing some giveaways. We're going to be doing a raffle. We are going to have some fun in there. We're also going to do some real live work together. So I'll be giving you my line planning template, something that I use on a daily basis as a product manager. I will be gifting that to you in the workshop so that we can work on it together. We're going to start filling it out together within the 90 minutes that we're going to be together in that workshop. And you are going to walk away with a tool that you can then use forever in your career, something that you can look at, understand your margins, understand how costing works, and rolling it all up to a revenue and a profit that you might want for your company. All of that is coming straight to you in this free workshop. Please, again, go to thebusinessofapparel.com/free workshop to sign up today. And I cannot wait to see you there. We're starting next week. See you soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.